Okay, welcome to Update Day. This is the day we always look forward to immediately after a little bit bigger update where we get some small bug fixes. So we're going to go through the list of the updates that came today. This is 10.8.1. It released about 2 hours ago, and so that's like 11:30 Mountain Time where I am. And it's not a massive update, but it's just bugs and stability things. But it's nice to know that they're still, working hard on making sure this is good. Some of these are pretty esoteric, niche bugs, but hey, we'll take whatever we can get. As a side note, it appears there is no Logic Pro for iPad update that's doing any bug fixes right now. So small enough that it's not affecting the interchange functionality between Logic Pro for Mac and Logic Pro for iPad. Still cool. So let's dive right into this. The first category is stability and reliability. A lot of these ones in the past have been something like it no longer crashes if no longer quits. But in this case, we have some other things. So the first one, Logic Pro no longer displays a MIDI timeout error when loading certain projects. Don't know which projects those would be. I didn't have that issue with any of the versions. And if you're watching and you've had these issues, let me know in the chat because it is interesting to know firsthand which of these have been affecting people, or if it's just something that a beta tester, bug sweeper is looking for, or if they've been reported and then deemed repeatable. The next one is fixes an issue where Logic Pro could hang when loading a project that contains plugins that are not installed on the computer. So if you have if you're going between different computers and one computer, you have some plugins that you don't have on the second one, it was causing it to hang. I think I've had a similar issue in past versions, not just with Logic, but with other ones like that too. It's a tricky issue. Next one, fixes an issue where Logic could quit unexpectedly when multiple MIDI regions are dragged into sample alchemy. I haven't had that issue, but I don't know if I've ever tried doing multiple MIDI regions either. I think I've just been doing one at a time. Worth testing out. That gives me some food for thought anyway. Resolves an issue in which switching between open projects might cause Logic Pro to unexpectedly quit if one of them is using flex time. That's a pretty niche bug that I'm sure somebody running into. I love having multiple open projects that you can switch between, not having to close them like you would have to do in Pro Tools or other workstations. Choosing edit transients for an audio file in the live loop cell editor no longer causes Logic Pro to quit unexpectedly. That's what we expect in this section for sure. And then resolves an issue where Logic could hang when importing audio tracks from a project with a different sample rate. Okay, cool. So not a massive list, but certainly a list that I'm glad they're working on. Let's see if there's any on this list. Some of this list I was able to get through before I started the stream, and the second half I haven't even looked at. So we'll see if there's any fun surprises. Under performance, using the arrow tool to drag selecting multiple regions is now more visually responsive. Maybe it was just like lagging behind or something. I was just dragging multiple regions the other day on 10.8 and didn't notice this. But we're used to lag in Logic, honestly. Accessibility, there's a VoiceOver now announces the start and end points of regions when Control Home or Control End is pressed. Okay, that's super useful, actually. Looks like that's a new function, not a bug fix, but a new feature for VoiceOver, which we love when they add features to VoiceOver. There's a big group of Logic users who need those and need them to work. Sampler, Quick Sampler, and Sampler Alchemy, which is not the name of it. Typo. It is called Sample Alchemy, right? I'm not crazy. Oh, I want to do, there's an empty one. Instrument. I'm like, yeah, they add an extra letter there. That's not a big deal. Who cares? But I hate it when these lists have typos. I've talked about that before. It annoys me. That's how we get bugs in the first place. Typos, right? Resolves an issue where sampler might run out of voices prematurely when using a lot of sustain pedal presses. I love sustain pedal, so I'm sure at some point this has affected one of my projects. I don't know if it's just since 10.8, but since last week I've used a number of those, the sampler tools and a lot of presses, so I'm sure that could have affected without even knowing it. So plugins, 3 changes here. Recorded MIDI notes are no longer duplicated with certain Audio Unit version 3 instrument plugins. Okay. I haven't noticed that one, but I'm glad they're fixing it. Audio Unit plugins that offer MIDI control now show up reliably as audio effects. Audio Unit plugins that offer MIDI control. So for the longest time, I'm going to switch back into here for a second. Audio effects. Let me look at the instruments. So AU MIDI controlled effects down here, but I've heard that we're able to use MIDI control now with the audio units. It was a quietly released thing. I haven't been able to actually prove it yet. Let's just load it here for a second. I need to update this version anyway. But I see, I don't know. I'm going to have to explore that a little bit. So I'm not exactly sure with this one. MIDI control now show up reliably as audio effects. Cool. I haven't had that issue. Most of mine have been showing up anyway. The next one, the instances of the vintage graphic EQ plugin activate as expected when a project is loaded. I guess it wasn't activating as expected. So yay. Yay for that working. Takes and comping has one thing. Changing the color of a take folder now also changes the colors. I'm sure they meant of the individual takes when the setting view appearance region color as track color is enabled. Man, need to pay somebody to proofread these things. But it's just a coloring of the take and comping folder, which is in the view settings. So where would that be? Tracks maybe? Tracks, region markers, background, grid lines, regions. Where did I just miss it someplace? So view, oh, let's do that up there. So view, I was in the wrong place, looks like. Appearance. Oh, with the setting view appearance. Huh. Well, is that in project settings? They don't have a view. Logic, settings, view, appearance. What am I missing? Anybody watching and can tell me what I'm totally missing here? Region color, marker color, background color, grid lines. I don't know. So takes and comping, view appearance region color as track color. I don't. something's off with that description of where that is, but I'll probably figure it out when I'm not on a live stream and trying to think about it fast. But I don't know where that is. I couldn't find it just now. Ellie Winter says, I think the MIDI control effect one is saying that sometimes the effect versions did not show up properly before now. That's what I was taking that to mean as well. But I just haven't had the issue. And I have seen a number of people talking about how the where we had to split it before to get MIDI to effects isn't the case anymore. And so I didn't see that in the release notes, but some people have been saying that that's the case. Need to take some time and explore it. Under the mixer, the track color setting in channel strip components for the channel strip inspector now works correctly. Awesome. It is now possible to simultaneously adjust multiple selected faders that are both inside and outside a track stack. I love it. Okay, I guess there was an issue. Again, a lot of these seem pretty small, but there's going to be at least one user that is happy someplace. Drummer and drum machine designer resolves an issue where some drummer tracks might sound different if the project is open immediately after launching Logic Pro. I mean, that's super specific. Key commands, the delete file key command in the project audio window no longer deletes the track. Good. And the increment last clicked parameter key command now works properly when adjusting velocities of selected notes in the piano roll. Again, cool. And Dr. Voodoo, yes, I did see that, and I'll probably make it just a non-live stream video about that in the near future, just to verify that it's all working. But I haven't actually had time to do the test yet. Let's see, track header. Option clicking the power button in the track header now disables the track without unloading its plugins. Gosh, is that a new feature or a return to an old feature? Feels like that was something we could do in the past, but unloading, I'm sure that means taking them off. Or does that just mean offloading its resources? Maybe there was a glitch in between where it was doing actually taking them off, but it still should. Let's just add an EQ here. And for those who don't use the power button, I certainly use it sometimes. So we're looking at option clicking, but let's just turn it off. It looks like they go gray, so that they're off. If I option click, those stay active, but the track goes off. Okay, so that's what it's leaving them active, which I can't think of a reason why I would want to do that, except maybe if you're in the middle of a playback or something, then it doesn't have to reload those plugins or other situations. Okay, cool. Track or control surfaces and MIDI controllers. Track colors now show correctly on the Behringer X-Touch external control surfaces. I had heard that they had added that feature, but apparently it looks like it might not have been working 100% correctly. Now, hopefully it will. I know a lot of people love the Behringer X-Touch. So it's the extender. I see. Editing. Manually edited transients in the audio file editor are now retained when the region is resized. That's good. The piano roll velocity tool now works for all selected notes across multiple regions. Good. Adjusting the velocities of multiple selected notes with piano roll automation now expands the velocity range as expected. Okay. Multiple selected regions in a folder now display correctly in the piano roll. I haven't seen any of these things in action, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And when the event list view is set to event position and length as time, empty positions can now be copied and pasted into a text editor. Okay, that's actually super useful for some people. And then general, the last 5 of these. The gain tool now works as expected on takes folder. Okay. That's good to know. I don't know if that had been working before, but that's one that I've certainly was just experiencing the other day. Definitely not working as expected, but hopefully it is. Selected regions are now automatically deselected as expected when creating or modifying elements in global tracks. So I think I was talking about the drummer track and how I use the arrangement track. I create the arrangement and then create a drummer track and it puts all the drums in different spots. I bet you that's actually what was happening. I'll have to verify that, but it was weirdly leaving some of the drummer tracks selected when I was changing things in the global track. So that could actually be one of the fixes that I was looking for. Have to test it out to make sure, but I've definitely noticed some different ways that the global tracks were affected with selected regions. Cool. Resolves an issue where track focus could shift to the top track when drag copying regions to existing tracks. That one I did see this last week. That kind of stuff drives me crazy. So hopefully that's fixed. Fade out is no longer displayed twice the first time the fade type drop-down menu is opened. Cool. And then fixes an issue where user disabled MIDI ports could be added unexpectedly as active ports to the end of the list in MIDI inputs settings. I'm going to check that one real quick. MIDI inputs. What do I have on right now? That's my main keyboard, IAC, Logic Pro Virtual, and my SSL. Okay, so sounds like perhaps some of the stuff ended up going down below. I don't need the SSL one turned on. Or, well, I can leave the SL Studio ports. That's my main controller. Still wondering about the view thing. I'm sure I'm missing something. Oof. I'm excited to get a MIDI 2.0 device to try out with MIDI 2.0. It'll be awesome. Okay. Pretty small, very specific set of enhancements and bug fixes. But this is great because we move forward. And every time we get one of these point upgrades, it means that we're getting better. And sometimes it's bugs that were introduced in the most recent version that they're fixing, and sometimes it's bugs that have been persistent over time. I don't know for this specific list. Maybe some of you can tell me which of these you're facing, but I would love to hear. We've got a decent crowd for a moment. Which bugs are you still facing? Put this in the chat. Which bugs are you facing that were not remedied in this particular update? I'd love to know because I'd love to try them out and see. I did a video last night about bugs ironically, did not know that 10 point, excuse me, that 10.8.1 was coming out today. But it's like I always have that sixth sense about it. I'm not a beta tester for this software, nor do I think. I mean, maybe if they came and said, "Would you do it?" I might say yes, just because I couldn't help myself. But I've beta tested software in the past. I was an early Bitwig beta tester, and I was a Studio One beta tester, and I'm not a great beta tester, mostly because I like to guess what's coming next. I can do videos on this channel without worrying about a non-disclosure agreement. No one can't get in trouble for for making stuff up when I don't have access to any of the actual knowledge. And it's just like tedious. I like finding bugs and complaining about them, but to actually have it be a job where you go through and test it very meticulously, it takes a certain personality. That's not me. So Dr. Voodoo says, I didn't experience any of the bugs in the release notes. I literally think that I did have a couple of them. Let me do a new project for a second. I just want to try. Well, that was exciting. I forgot. Oof, streaming really hates it when I make a new project in Logic. But I'm back. And for those watching this later, they just delete those little gaps in the stream. So that's nice. Dr. Voodoo says, I had the project notes bug that I mentioned yesterday, but it was only in that one project. I couldn't replicate it in a new project. Yeah, that's one of the issues. I'm going to try this one that I sometimes do here where I'm making the drummer track, right? So I make my arrangement, new drummer track. I still don't. That wasn't the way it used to be. It never used to have that first region be selected and none of the other ones. I get it when I move things around like that, because that leaves it selected, but it's when you change to a different, it's just doing that one track. Yeah, so that's not really a bug. It just seems to be a new way of having to think about it. I hate, those are the worst kind of bugs, or not bugs, the worst kind of upgrades that aren't bugs, but that make you think about how you're doing it. In some ways, it's super powerful because it means I can come through to my intro and say, you know what, I want that to be a hard rock pattern, but it doesn't change the rest of my patterns. But if I want to change all of the patterns, then I change it by selecting them all. So some things, it's just a new way of working, really. Let's see. Soli says, a bug I experienced is Logic not recognizing my plugins whenever I would restart it. Oof, that is a bug. Plastodon is asking, maybe me, what Mac am I using? This is the Mac Studio Ultra M1, but it's the Ultra, so it's still one of the more powerful ones out there, even more so than many of the M2s and such. Source for sometimes the MIDI notes disappear in the piano roll. So I've always struggled with the piano roll in certain circumstances. This isn't a new thing. Let me just load up a situation where I run into this all the time right now. Vintage electric piano. Oh, I don't know if I have MIDI. Let's see. Da-da-da. All right, so we have MIDI coming. And if you start your recording at bar 1, beat 1, right? So sometimes I have found that we lose the very beginning notes. Right now, they're there, which is really strange. I just recorded something yesterday, and it was deleting those first notes. Maybe we fixed something that it's not even listed. I always wonder sometimes if Apple's like, or the engineers over there on Logic team are like, you know what, let's not mention this one. I will say none of those are moving when I turn on the groove track. Ooh, that's interesting. Let's do quantize to eighth notes. They did move in for that. Those would have been gone. Let's do that with the... That's a good sign that they weren't just all deleted when I recorded them. Maybe something else got fixed. Placidon says, I have the M1 Studio Max, but felt like I should have gotten the Ultra. I've used both. I did a video where I was testing out both, and I agree. It's like the Max was powerful and did almost everything I wanted, but every once in a while it would unexpectedly hit some sort of invisible ceiling I didn't know about. And the Ultra has never. It's always been good. So Source 4, it does both. So for instance, if I've got an EQ here and a compressor, right, and I have that option turned on, if I just turn it off, it does unload them. It's just if you hold the option key that it doesn't unload them. It just turns off the track. But the rest of it, it's like the track power button in this case just turns off the region, so I can still... So I can still play the instrument even with the track powered off. But if I turn it off without the option key, then it just turns off all the plugins at the same time. So you get both of them. It's actually really, just hearing about it for the first time, it's very useful. Maybe it's useful because then it turns off all the automation and all the MIDI regions, and I can just play the instrument without having any of the in progress MIDI sequencing playing that instrument. Man, my mic just had a weird pop freak out. Oof. I love my solid state Logic, but that preamp is, in combination with this mic, is sometimes a little hot. Ellie Winter says that used to be the opposite. Just clicking kept the plugins active, and option click turned them all off. Okay, so interesting. I thought it always pulled them off. Well, originally Logic had one of the worst sets of features in this area. For instance, if you froze a track back in the day, it would take everything off of the processor. But if you had any sample-based or instrument that used storage of RAM, it would leave all that stuff loaded in the RAM. And so you'd have an orchestral bank, you'd freeze, all the instruments. It would save on processing, but it would leave everything in the RAM. And so your computer would become like an unusable brick until you unfroze and unloaded. Now the freezing pulls it off. So it's nice to have options in this case, because sometimes you're like, I don't need to worry about the processing. but I just want to turn off that track from playing all of its regions. Instead of going through and muting and doing other stuff, you can just hit the off button. So that's kind of nice. Any other bugs that people are facing, let me know in the chat. We're going to go for about maybe 10 more minutes. And then I've got to do some parenting things. Pick up the monsters at school. I haven't tested out or had any other things that I've been able to replicate. As I was talking about in my video last night, I've had some things, inconsistencies, just random things, like when I froze all my tracks and went to record with them frozen, it wasn't playing the frozen tracks while the record was enabled. It was just doing it when I was playing it. And then I could actually punch in and it would still play them. But once I unfroze and refroze, it didn't have that issue anymore. So I can't even repeat it. And if I can't repeat it, I don't report it, just because the only ones that they're going to be able to help with are the ones that are repeatable across the board. Let's see. Loser Dub says, hey, when I bounce, what does a second pass do? How do I stop the tail end of the song going into the beginning? What is dithering? Man, those are all great questions. So pounce. Let's see what we have for our current bounce stuff. So if we're doing a PCM wave, bit depth, file type, dithering, what are you, in this case, you're talking about a few things. Second pass. And this, I haven't had the tail end of the song going into the beginning, but the audio tail, often, if you have like a selection made, but there's still sound, like a reverb or something tailing out, it'll capture that. I usually set my the selection of what I want to bounce perfectly, so I don't need the audio tail turned on, but I'll make sure that the fade is already happening. The dithering is something that is a process that adds a small amount of noise when you're doing bit truncation. So you're going from like 24 bits down to 16 bits. We did this a lot more in the era of CDs when we would record at 24 bits and process at 24 bits. And now 32-bit float and process. And when we're going down in bits, we get quantization errors that where, say, of your digital audio, because less bits is less resolution in terms of the volume in any given sample. If you end up having a situation where it's going to the same bit more in a row than you would like, it's not really super distinguishable. I know some people can hear them and understand like the sonic result of this, which does sound like digital artifacts to a small degree. But if you put just a slight bit of noise in there, randomization, then it changes the quantization of the bits as you're truncating them and creates a much more pleasant end result of a lower bit sample or lower bit depth audio file. And so we use dithering when we're going to lower bit depths. Boom. Welcome to my Audio Production 1 class at the university. And actually I'm going to be teaching next semester a mastering in digital audio class where we'll still talk about bit depth and dithering. We have power 1, 2, and 3, which is one is dithering, the other two are noise shaping. And UV22HR is grayed out. Cool, maybe because, yeah, we weren't actually going down. You can do those ones either way, but when you're going to 16, you can use the UV22HR. But I I export a lot as 24-bit files, or if I'm going to listen on my phone in the car, sometimes AAC or MP3, and those are a different set of issues. Drive Doom says still having issues that some VSTs are recognized right but not listed as VST. Let me see what, I think I might have to do an update on my black hole. Where, no. Eventide. I have them all turned off right now, weirdly enough. Says successfully validated MIDI controlled effect and effect. Looks like they're okay. I don't see any. Anyway. Oh, that's true. For the loop, if there is a carryover of an effect that's a time-based loop that would go back into the beginning, then you would want to actually make sure you get what it sounds like at the beginning. Anyway, Loser Dub says, awesome, thanks. You won't hear much of a difference, but there is a difference. And Loser Dub says, sorry, I'm going to spam you with questions. Not as much today, because in about 5 to 10 minutes, I'll be pulling the plug on this. Can I use black hole? Let me turn it on and I'll see what it's doing here. I have all of them turned off for reasons. I was troubleshooting not too long ago, going up to non-Rosetta. I can't use Rosetta anymore for Logic because some of the coolest features are non-Rosetta. Let's just load up this Eventide black hole. I love black hole. It's a good sound reverb. Let me try, the MIDI version. Theoretically, we're supposed to be able, like I said, I've heard somebody talking about MIDI now working in effects. But that one on an aux track is not a case of it being where it's going to work right this moment. Kill. Oh, I still have the kill on. There we go. Pretty, so pretty. Loser Dub says, am I the only one who thinks the stock compressor works way better? Fab Filter and Friends. I wouldn't say way better, but certainly the stock one works really well. And I use it a lot for a lot of things. It's certainly a great plugin. And it gives me enough variation of with the algorithms that I think it's pretty useful. I don't find myself reaching too far these days for other compressors. Even the multipressor in Logic, which needs an update. I mean, it sounds pretty good. I wish we had the character that we have with the other compressor in here as well, but this thing, like with the solo bands and listening to each of the bands and the compression across the bands, it just it's great. It's really good. But I don't think compression is the place where I would want to give as much color and character in a mix. I really want my compression to do its job. Every once in a while, I have a little character. So, for instance, this is the default for me when I'm just looking for transparency. This is one that I use for vocals because it's really modeled after the LA2A. I mean, each of these, I mean, who doesn't love a good old Focusrite Red? Actually, they're okay. I've never really been a huge fan, even of the hardware ones, which I've used a number of times. They're okay. I mean, they're great, but it's like some of this stuff, I just want it to really work well and do its job. And I need a mix knob so I can do parallel or companion. And so there's just very functional in terms of compression. Drive Doom says a Kai MPC Roland VST, some eventide. All I can't see in LP 10.8. Interesting. Roland. What do I have with Roland? I don't know if I have anything turned on. I need to write the guy over at Roland. We're buddies. 808. So these are the instruments. We'll do a new. Come on, give me a track. Roland Cloud. I might need to authenticate. I haven't done it in a minute. Yeah. That's fine. Let me just do it real quick. Okay, it's having some issues. Talk to those guys. It looks like it's working at least. That's cool. Ellie Winter says, I really like using sample alchemy to make playable one-shots out of Apple loops. That's my favorite. It's like all the tools we've been getting, Beat Breaker, sample alchemy, and even before that with things, they're really helping us revitalize this whole library of Apple loops, which 8 times out of 10 are totally useless. So, and DDV says, well, they fixed one of my 3 MIDI bugs. Hey, 1 out of 3 is better than 0. Let's see. Yes, external MIDI tracks are the one thing I highly recommend never using in Logic. There's no good reason to use them any longer, in my opinion. And I've got a number of external pieces of gear. So I do everything now with instrument tracks and the external MIDI plugin instead of fighting the external MIDI tracks, which are just horrible POSs. They're not great. They don't work. They have all kinds of glitchy bugs with them. The internal something with them in Logic has just messed up and broken and has never been worth fixing. So I just use instrument tracks with the external MIDI plugin instead of using external MIDI tracks themselves. Man, I'm going to have to figure out what's up with my Roland Cloud. I'll check it out this afternoon. Write those guys. I love the Roland stuff, but some of it's hard to use. Most of it sounds amazing. Yeah, and I think I've been able to get rid of, so this is back for DDV talking about the environment. I think I've been able to get rid of almost all of my environment usage now. Oof. I get it. There's some stuff in there that I've used for years, but for the most part, I think I've been able to transition away from it, which is nice. It's still there for anyone who's like, this environment you speak of. It's like sometimes we like to imagine that everyone's an advanced Logic user. We've got about 30 of you on here right now. How many of you watching right this moment, put this in the chat, please. How many of you have used Logic for more than 3 years? And tell me if you haven't. Say, I have not used it for more than 3 years, or I have used it for more than 3 years. So I'm curious if what we have in terms of an audience for people who have used it less than that. So, right? A bunch of you have used it for a long time. I'm going on, let's see, when did I first use my first version of Logic? 22 years ago. Myself. Has anyone watching used it less than 3 years? Don't be ashamed. That's not a trick question. I'm curious because I want to know about where we're at with it. So, I mean, Sergio, 2000, that's 23 years. So, I mean, we're looking at an experienced group. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, the environment. It's like, I know how to work my way around the environment. It's like, I love the environment. And I love pranking people with the environment. I made a whole video about that. And Loser Dub says, since March. And that's amazing. I love that. It's like there are people who are just new to this. And the audience that Apple's, really cultivating isn't us old timers. It's a lot of the new users. So I don't know. It's there's parts of it. I think I've gotten almost everything out of the environment. I still use the environment for troubleshooting, clicks and ports, looking at things to make sure that they're working as they should be, and then the off chance test or working on something to figure it out. But with the MIDI effects and the MIDI effects scripter, it's like you can do so many things. I need to do another video about the scripter and AI because you can actually use artificial intelligence. Something like ChatGPT can look at your code and actually modify it and add new functionality to the scripter plugins. It's like, that's cool, right? We don't need the environment to do cool things, but the environment is cool. But it's just saying, it's like the scripter really gives us some things. Gunther, how you doing? We are, sadly, I've got to go because if I don't leave in the next 60 seconds, my kids are going to be sitting out in the cold, just staring at the sidewalk, waiting for me to pick them up. Thanks everybody for joining. This was a good group and a lot of good comments. And I'll probably look through these bug fixes, but there's not much to them. And we'll be doing another video probably for a release tomorrow afternoon about some topic or another. But nice to see you all, and I'll catch you on the next one.